everyone. This is Voice of Context. I'm your host, Diane Ding. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Nir Eyal. Nir is the author of two best-selling books, Hooked and Indistractable. He's also taught at Stanford and built two tech companies. His work has shaped how founders everywhere think about engagement, focus, and ethics.
All these products, they keep us checking again and again and again.
It's not the technology's fault, guys. I hate to tell you this. I wish I could blame Zuckerberg and TikTok, but these are just tools.
That there are some simple things that we can do, like mastering our internal triggers, to control our attention and choose our life.
So today we'll talk about what still holds true in the AI era and what's breaking down, and how to build products that leave people better off. Nir, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
I still remember the first time I think I was driving and listening to your audiobooks, 2014 or 15. I was blown away. I don't know, if you want to rewrite Hook today, what would you keep and what would you retire? What would you add?
Yeah, funny enough, we did an updated version of the book fairly recently, and the core model, nothing has changed because human psychology doesn't change, right? We've had essentially the same human psychology for 200,000 years of evolution, so we don't change that much in terms of the core model of the Hook model: trigger, action, reward, investment. That holds true across time. It holds true across cultures, socioeconomic status. There's really no difference between humans when it comes to how they respond to these core psychological factors. What I would revise, what change are the examples, right? So a product that was very popular back in 2014 when I first published the book maybe isn't as hot and sexy and on everybody's minds today. So I think I replaced Evernote with TikTok because it's just a more widely understood product. But the same core fundamental attributes are exactly the same.
Yeah, so basically the same, like people still feels boredom and people still feels like lonely, and it's the same thing.
Right. So that at the core of all products essentially is motivation. You know what? And I think it's an important thing to understand and take a step back to really process that. I think a lot of products are made for functional needs, and product teams tend to stay very surface level, right? My customer said they need this feature, I'll give them that feature. Where what I think is a much more fruitful strategy is to really understand the why, the deeper reason why we do what we do as customers, as users. What's the source of all human motivation? It's not the pursuit of pleasure, but rather everything we do is for one reason and one reason only, and that is the desire to escape discomfort. That everything you do, even wanting to feel good, is psychologically destabilizing. So craving, desire, lusting, hunger, all of these things, even though they are in the pursuit of pleasure, are themselves motivated by the desire to escape discomfort. And that's incredibly important. Because if your customer isn't in some kind of pain, there's no reason for them to act. Now, we never want to create that pain. That's not the goal here. What we want to do is to look for that discomfort that already exists. Our customers are already in a lot of pain, right? That pain is boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety. There's a lot of pain in the world. And so I think the promise of product design, of what we do for a living, it's not to make a lot of money and get rich. It's to solve people's problems. And when we look at it through that lens of what is the psychological need, not just what is the functional need, but what's the psychological need, that opens the aperture to allow us to come up with all kinds of solutions that we wouldn't come up with if it was just, oh, my customer needs this specific feature. And so that's really what I try and encourage my clients to do, and where they've been very successful is looking broader at these core psychological needs of what drives us, not just to click and buy, but what drives us to do everything, which is the avoidance of discomfort.
I understand. But you also mentioned in your previous interviews that people will be bifurcating. There are people who have so much free time they want to kill, and there are people like trying to fulfill their curiosity, and then they don't want to be like kind of mindless scrolling to death. So do you think that we should encourage the latter one, not the previous ones?
So, it's difficult. I'm not a leader of a country. I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not. So it's very difficult for me to say what we should do on a societal level. Right. And frankly, I don't know if it's anyone's job to tell people what they should do with their time. Why is watching golf on TV somehow morally superior to playing a video game? I don't know. What's the difference? Why is one better than the other? So I think we have to take a step back and realize that even the fact that we are having this conversation is a sign of the incredible luxury that we have to live in this day and age. I mean, for thousands and thousands of years, people were struggling to just feed themselves and their family. Still to this
Of
day,
course.
billions of people on the face of the earth are not thinking about, oh, am I spending my time on TikTok? They're thinking about how do I feed my kids? And
Right.
so this is a very high class problem to have the luxury of the time to scroll aimlessly, right? That's
So
an
I'm thinking like
incredible.
an elitist.
Yeah, extremely, right? If you're on a factory floor and you're making iPhones all day, you're not scrolling TikTok, right? You're very busy. So it's really the leisure class that even has this problem. Now, how people spend their time, I think, needs to be a personal decision. I don't think it's up to us to mandate or to encourage or to dictate. Now, what you can do as a product designer, what you do have control over, is what type of products you build. And so part of my advice, I think a huge competitive advantage in product design is to build for yourself. If you look at the change makers over the past 20 years of technology innovation, when it comes to the consumer space, and even to some extent the enterprise space, it's people who built products that they themselves desperately needed, right? Zuckerberg made what was called the Facebook on Harvard campus because he needed it, right? He wanted to meet girls, and that's why he made the Facebook. When you think about Twitter, when you think about Google, when you think about Amazon, these people were building something that they needed in the world. They wanted to see exist. And I think that gives you a huge competitive advantage. Number one, if you build something that you believe needs to exist, you have access to the hardest part of product design, which is designing for someone who actually needs the product, right? Building something people want, as Paul Graham says, is not trivial. It sounds simple, and we all think, oh, we know what people want. But if you build for somebody else, if you build for somebody in a different country or somebody at a company you don't understand or an industry you're not super familiar with, you are very likely to make big, big mistakes in your assumptions. Whereas if you build for yourself, you have a huge competitive advantage because you're the consumer. You know what you want. And then secondly, even if that product is a commercial failure, it's a practical success. Because even if you build something that just you yourself really need in the world, that's already a success because you can't control all the exogenous factors. You can't control everything that's happening in the market. You can't guarantee commercial success. You can guarantee that I build something I want that I think is very useful. And I think if you do that, you are much more likely, if you build something that's useful to at least somebody, you're much more likely to have also built something that's useful to millions of other people. But what I see often is the mistake is that people build for this amorphous person out there. And when I ask them, hey, would you actually use this? Is this something that would bring joy and satisfaction in your own life? Nah, not really. I wouldn't use it. Those are the kind of products that tend to fail.
But do you think that the founders or entrepreneur, they should have like a new guideline, not getting people just mindless scrolling for hours and hours, and then they should be have like a conscious mind? Like, is there any like ethical guidelines for them, or you think that's just for users to decide?
So in Hooked, that was published in 2014, so long before
Right.
this, when I first published Hooked, I had to convince people that consumer psychology worked, right? I had to convince people that you can use these tactics to increase engagement because at the time people just thought, oh, Zuckerberg just got lucky. Whereas now I don't have to make that argument anymore. Now everybody knows that they're using
Right.
psychological
Yeah.
tactics to get you hooked. And so I helped kind of expose that so that we could all use it and not just for social media and for
Or you
video games.
understand it and then you stay away from it if you don't want to.
You could stay away from it or you
Right.
can use it for good. So Hooked, I didn't write Hooked for the social media companies and the gaming companies. That's where I stole the secrets from, right?
True.
The idea was to use those techniques so that we can build all kinds of products that benefit people. So Fitbod uses the Hook model to get people hooked to exercise. Duolingo uses the Hook model to get people hooked to learning a new language. You can, in financial services, get people hooked to saving money. There's all kinds of ways we can get people hooked for good. That's the point of Hooked, is not to help people, with frivolity, but to use it for good. And so the ethical guideline, and it's in the very first edition of the book, it's called the morality of manipulation. That manipulation tends to have a negative connotation. which I don't think is warranted. That manipulation is not necessarily good or bad. Manipulation just means you're changing someone's feelings, emotions, behaviors, but that could be used for different ends. So on one end of the spectrum is what's called persuasion. Persuasion is when we help people do things that they themselves want to do, but for lack of good experience design, don't do. So we all want to exercise. We want to eat right. We want to learn new languages. We want to be more productive. We want to connect with family. We want to save money, but we don't because it's hard. So technology can help us do those things by persuading us to do the things we ourselves want to do. That's not only ethically correct, we should encourage more of it. If you have the ability to help someone save money, eat right, be healthier, connect with family, and you're not doing it, that's unethical, right? Because that's persuasive technology. On the other end of the spectrum is coercion. Coercion is the opposite of persuasion. Coercion is when you get people to do something they did not want to do. And there's almost nobody who can ethically do that other than the government. The government can say, hey, you're speeding, here's a ticket, and you're coerced to pay it. Even if you don't want to pay, you have to pay the ticket. That's the only people in society that can coerce people legally. Typically, coercion is illegal. So you could use the tactics that I talk about for either persuasion or coercion. And what I talk about in the book is to make sure you're using them only for persuasion. Because if you're trying to coerce people, not only is that ethically bad, it's bad for business. Right? People might do business with you one time, and then if you trick them, if you got them to do something they later regret, not only are they not going to do business with you ever again, they're going to tell all their friends on social media not to do business with you either. So it really doesn't pay over the long term. Very, very few companies, I've never heard of any companies that can sustain their business models through coercion.
So basically, still like you want people to serve their own goals instead of like having them to kind of slip away in some bad habits.
Right. Now, many times, like, for example, what you said about scrolling. Again, like, why is watching TV different from scrolling? I don't know.
I think the part that you put it very well in previous interviews, like, if you plan a vacation or you plan some recreational activities, so that's great. But if you're like kind of compulsively doing things,
right,
but that's like bad.
So that's I think we're looking at it through different lenses.
Right.
You were asking about as a product designer. As a product designer, I don't think you have a special obligation to tell people, hey, you're doing this too much, right? Does the news media, does CNN or the New York Times or Fox News say, hey, you're watching too much TV? No. So why do the social media companies tell you, hey, this is pointless? It's entertainment. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. What's the difference between watching it on TV or reading a book or a magazine or scrolling on your phone? It's just a new way of curing boredom, frankly. So that's from the lens of the product maker. Now, if we change that perspective and now we go into the user's mind, and this is the subject of my second book, Indistractable, now we've got a whole nother discussion. Now it's about how do we as the consumers of this technology, knowing that the people who make it will not tell us to use it less, right? It's stupid to think that the government or the product maker is going to come in and tell us how to use things properly. It's not going to happen. Rather, we ourselves need to take some responsibility and realize that it's not our fault that these things exist. TikTok's not going to tell you to stop. New York Times is not going to tell you to stop. Nobody's going to tell you to stop. It's not their job, right? Or because, hey, Netflix, stop making television shows so interesting. I like your movies too much. Stop it. No, that's stupid. That's why we want these things, because they're engaging. And so it's up to us as consumers to figure out what is serving us and what are we serving. If you feel like you're wasting time, that you regret the time you spent with these technologies, thankfully, there's many things you can do about it. And so that's where we get into this framework. That's what Indistractable is all about. Hooked is about how do you build good habits through technology. And then Indistractable is about how do you break these bad habits with technology. And that's not necessarily easy. All good things in life are difficult. You want to have a beautiful relationship with your spouse? Takes work. You want to raise great kids? Takes work. You want to have an amazing career? Takes work. And so I think it's unrealistic to expect us to just know how to deal with these technologies, we have to learn, as all humans have, right? When cars were first invented, you know how many car accidents there were? And yet we see traffic fatalities decreasing per miles driven because cars got safer and safer, and people learned how to use these technologies better. And so that's what we're going through now, right? So we have these new technologies like social media, like AI, and of course they cause harms. They cause a lot of goods, way more goods than bads, I believe, but we're still learning. We're stumbling through how to use these tools correctly. And so that's what I wanted to add to the conversation in Indistractable in my book, is some pretty basic but not obvious techniques that we can use and that we should definitely teach our children, because look, the world is only becoming a more distracting place. So I wanted to educate people and frankly educate myself. I wrote the book for me because I was incredibly distracted. And so I needed to figure out for myself, how can I make sure that I do what I say I'm going to do?
Yeah, I actually learned from your technique. You talked to your daughter about not playing on iPad for too long. My daughter is almost 4 years old, so we create a list, this to-do list for the whole day, and then she's very excited to cross out everything, even the laundry, even like clean the room. It was
There you go.
amazing. Yeah.
Wow. So I think that that's a beautiful example, right? Again, what your brain is constantly trying to do is to save effort, is to escape discomfort. And so for a lot of people, the easiest thing they can do is here's the device, here's the iPad, here's the phone,
Right.
go be quiet. And frankly, that's not the technology's fault. That's the fault of lazy parents, right? Whereas what you did, which is very smart, you sat down with your kid and said, "Hey, how do you want to spend your time?" There's nothing wrong with going on the iPad. That's fine. You can watch a program, as long as it's age appropriate. What else do you want to do? You want to go, and so that's actually not that different from what we should do as adults as well, is to plan our day. Because if you don't plan your time, someone is going to plan it for you. You're going to go to that default of scrolling it away or clicking it away or drinking it away or smoking it away unless you decide in advance how you want to spend your time. And so it's very important to teach our children. This is the second step. We skipped the first step, which is actually more important. But the second step is to make time for traction, that you have to plan that day. And if you don't plan your day, if you don't know what is traction, if you don't know what it is you wanted to do for that time, don't be surprised if everything is a distraction because you didn't plan your day.
Right. You have a great model in the book and also in some of your interviews. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. That's an awesome line.
Thank you. I'm glad you like that. So that's really the summary of my 15 years of research into this field. That's really the takeaway. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. That distraction is not a character flaw. It's not that there's something wrong with you. You don't have some kind of brain disease. It's simply that you haven't learned how to deal with discomfort. What class did we take in school that taught us how to deal with discomfort? I didn't take such a class. And so we never learned this. And so what do? We find ways to deal with impulsivity, right? We click it away, we scroll it away, we drink it away. We find ways to deal with that impulsivity. And so we have to learn that skill of dealing with impulsivity. And the way to deal with impulsivity is to plan ahead. That what most people do is they leave it up to the last minute, right? If you're on a diet and the chocolate cake is on the fork, you're going to eat it. It's too late. If you are trying to quit smoking, but the cigarette's in your hand, it's too late. You're going to smoke it. If you sleep next to your cell phone every night, it's the first thing you're going to reach for in the morning. It's too late. So the antidote to impulsivity is to plan ahead. That if you plan today, there's no distraction you can't overcome tomorrow.
It's planning and willpower.
Well, willpower is a tricky one. We're not even sure if willpower is a real thing. There's a lot of conflicting research in psychology around what is willpower. And a few years ago, there was this mental model that a lot of people kind of adopted, that willpower is like a battery charge, right, on your phone, that you can see, okay, 100%, 80%, 70%, 40%, that it kind of decreases the more you use it. And there was some original research showing that this was the case. And now it turns out that's not true. That in fact, there's only one group of people who run out of willpower. This is called ego depletion. That there's, in fact, it does exist, but only in one group of people use willpower like they would, a battery on a phone or gas in a gas tank. And it turns out that the only people who run out of willpower are people who believe that willpower is a depletable resource. So this is really, really important, because what it tells us is that if you expect to be drained of willpower, or you expect to have a lot of willpower, becomes true. But it's all about our beliefs. It's all about our expectations. It's not reality, because willpower isn't a resource. Willpower is an emotion, just a feeling. And so that's the proper way to think of it. We don't run out of feelings. You don't run out of happiness. You don't run out of anger. You don't run out of boredom. It's not a resource. It's a feeling. It's an emotion. And so that's a much healthier way to look at it. That you don't, the reason I'm hesitant to say you need willpower is because many times people follow these techniques, they try and be productive, and they say, oh, I don't feel like it. I don't have willpower right now, so I quit. And that's terrible. That's very counterproductive. You don't need willpower. It's just a feeling.
So how do we get not willpower, but you keep what you wanted to do, and then you like chugging along? Like what keep us going? Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of skip step one, which is important. So it's mastering the internal triggers. So knowing that everything we do is about the desire to escape discomfort. What we need are techniques ready to go. We need a toolbox full of different techniques that we can use whenever we don't feel like doing something. We need to recognize that hard work is hard. Everything worth having in life is hard. Right. And that's okay. I think we get into this, we expect everything to feel good and be easy. Who said? Right? So being able to recognize that things worth having are difficult. Having a good relationship, difficult. Raising kids, difficult, right? It requires effort. And when we try and make it easy, we become lazy. It's suboptimal, right? If you do what everybody else does in raising their kids, you're going to have a kid just like everybody else's kid. But if you want to have an exceptional kid who has a great life and who has an amazing relationship with you, you're going to have to think for yourself.
I did put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And it's interesting. It takes the kind of work that requires some forethought, right? Like what you did, which is so smart. You planned ahead to think, okay, today's Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday, my kid's not going to school, she's not going to daycare. What do we want to do? Right? It's forethought. And that's the way we should do a lot of the important things in our life. Now, that requires some work. A lot of people are, well, I'm too busy. I don't have time for this stuff. And they just go with the flow. They do what society tells them to do. And that's why they get mediocre results. So what we have to do is to have, back to the question around emotion regulation, is realize that distraction is always an escape from discomfort. So what am I going to do? How do I prepare in advance, knowing that this task is going to be difficult? I know I'm not going to feel like going to the gym. I know that working on that book is difficult. What tools will I have in place so that when I don't feel like it, when I don't want to do it because it's hard, what do? The default is to escape. The default is, let me just check the news. I'll worry about somebody's problems thousands of miles away. Yeah, scroll on TikTok, watch a YouTube video, look at sports, whatever, to escape the discomfort. I think that for most people, that's a big revelation. When they think, wait a minute, I'm actually checking TikTok, not because TikTok is so interesting. I'm going to TikTok because what I'm working on is so boring.
True.
That's the real reason. Okay, so wake up, realize that's why you're doing it. There's nothing on TikTok that's so amazing. It's just that what you're working on sucks. It's hard. So instead, what you need to do is to figure out when I feel like escaping the task at hand, what do I do instead of going on TikTok? And so that's where in the book, in Indistractable, I give over a dozen different tools that you can use, techniques that you can use that instantly come to mind that you will do instead. Let me give you one example, okay? So I've been a professional author now for over 15 years now. And every day when I write, all I want to do is get distracted. I want to check email. I want to go ask ChatGPT something. I want to look at YouTube videos.
I also work from home when I'm in the US. And in China, I work with my team in office. So it's really hard for me to be in the US and work alone by myself. Yeah.
Exactly. So me too. I work on my own, and it's very easy for me to do something else. So what do I do about that? I have a series of tools that I know I can use whenever I feel like I need to escape. So as opposed to going on YouTube or TikTok or checking the news or whatever, here's what I do instead. One of my favorite techniques is called the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule says that I can give in to any distraction. Okay, I can do whatever that thing is that I want to do, whether it's check email or the news or whatever. I can do it, but not right now. I have to wait 10 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll set an alarm on my phone or my watch. I'll say, okay, set a timer for 10 minutes. And now I have a choice to make. At any time, I can either get back to the writing or I can do what's called surf the urge. Surfing the urge acknowledges that these uncomfortable sensations, the boredom, the loneliness, the fatigue, the uncertainty, the anxiety, those sensations are temporary. But that's not how we think of them. When you experience boredom or loneliness or difficulty or fatigue, it feels like it's always going to be there. But that's not true. This is a trick that the brain plays on us. We think we're always going to feel that way, but it's not true. What you have to do instead is to realize that these emotions, they crest and then they subside, just like a wave. And so what you have to do is to surf that urge, just like a surfer on a surfboard. And so there's various different techniques you can use. One of my favorites is a mantra. Now, my mantra, I'll share it with you. You can steal it. You can make up your own. Here's what I tell myself. I close my eyes. I take a deep breath. And I remind myself this mantra. This is what it feels like to get better. This is what it feels like to get better. And just saying that 2, 3, 4 times, just taking a deep breath, waiting for a minute. Okay. And now I can get back to the task at hand. And sometimes I literally sit there for 10 minutes like this. And that's okay. Sometimes that happens. That's fine. But 9 times out of 10, I remind myself, this is what it feels like to get better. I don't need to expect it to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. Then I'm creating that space between that impulse to let me just go check email. Let me just go do that thing. I create that space between my impulse and what I really want. And by doing that, 9 times out of 10, I get back to the task at hand. And so what happens is over time that the 10-minute rule becomes 12 minutes, becomes 15 minutes, becomes 20 minutes. And now I realize, wait a minute, the TikTok doesn't control me. The YouTube doesn't control me. Email doesn't control me. This is in my power. And now I can get longer and longer before I have to give in to the distraction. So that's just one technique out of dozens that you can use that I describe in the book. But that's one that I use quite a bit still today.
I'll give out a try. So before I follow ChatGPT's suggestion, like do a little bit really easy tasks to begin with. And then you're like kind of getting to the working mode, and then you can just start doing a more difficult and complex and the thing that you don't want to get into.
Well, you can. Everybody's a little different in terms of what they want to work on when. It's not so much about scheduling based on the difficulty per se. Some people like to do this technique called eat the frog, where you do the hardest thing first. Some people like to work on easy stuff and then get going. I think I don't necessarily think, and you can play with that. What's important is that you set aside the time. The big mistake that a lot of people make is that they keep a to-do list. And a to-do list on its own is one of the worst things you can do for personal productivity. It's terrible because a to-do list has no constraints. A to-do list is just a register of things you want to have done. But if you have outputs, where's the input? Right? So if my daughter has a birthday, or your daughter has a birthday, right? Mm-hmm. And you go to the baker and you say, hey, I need a bunch of cupcakes. I need a dozen cupcakes. The baker's going to say, okay, to make a dozen cupcakes, I need sugar, I need flour, I need butter, I need the inputs in order to make the output of the dozen cupcakes. But for knowledge workers, what's the input? We know what the output is. The output is all that stuff on our to-do list. But what's the input? The input is just 2 things. It's not butter, sugar, and flour. It's time and attention. That's it. So where is it? It's not on a to-do list. That's output. The input is on your calendar. So when you say, hey, I need to work on this big important task, to just put on your to-do list is stupid. It's not going to get done. It has to be in your calendar. Now, here's the most important thing. Many people make this mistake when they start time boxing and they say, okay, I'm going to work on this task for 30 minutes, for an hour, or whatever. They think that to succeed, they have to finish the task. Because to-do lists have trained us, stupidly, to measure our self-worth by how many cute little boxes we check off. Big mistake. I used to do this. Let me tell you how foolish this is. I used to do a task and then remember, oh my gosh, I forgot to put it on my to-do list. So I would go back on my to-do list just so I could write it down and check it off. You've done this too?
Have that. Yep.
It's so silly because we think, oh, look how many things I accomplished. But if we're honest,
dopamine.
Yeah, it feels good. But to be honest, what did we do? We did the easy stuff. We did the urgent stuff. We didn't do the hard and important work we need to do to move our lives and career forward. Right? So it's pointless because you don't get extra points for doing easy things. Right? That's not the stuff that really moves your life forward. So instead, this is very, very important. when you time box a task and you say, oh, I'm going to work on this thing for an hour or whatever the case might be, it's not about finishing. There is no requirement to finish. The only requirement is to work on that task or do that thing for as long as you said you would without distraction. That's it. Not about finishing. Working on that task for as long as you said you would without distraction. Why is that so much better? Because that is the only way you will know how long things take. The biggest problem with how people manage their time today is that when you use this stupid to-do list technique and you check off a bunch of cute boxes, you have no idea how long things take. Here's what happens. You say, okay, I've got this big project I need to work on. Okay, I work on it for 5 minutes and then, oh, you know what? I really could use some tea. Let me just go get some tea for a minute. And oh, there's Billy at the water cooler. Hey, how's it going? And you start chit-chatting and oh, let me just check email for a quick minute. And oh my gosh, look what happened in the news. Wait, what am I working on again? Totally forgot. And so you have no idea how long things take. And it turns out on average, things take 3 times longer than most people estimate. So when people say, okay, how long will this take? It turns out it actually takes them 3 times longer to finish because they have no clue how long things take. Whereas when you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to work on this task and do nothing but, I'm not going to do anything but work on that task for 30 minutes. That's it. No email, no distraction, nothing but that task. Now I can say, okay, after 30 minutes, how much should I do? Oh, I have to make this presentation. All right, well, I know the presentation needs to be about 30 slides. And look, I finished about 3 slides. So that means I need 9 more time boxes in order to finish the entire task. Now I have a feedback loop. Whereas with a to-do list, you have no idea how long things take. So time boxing is much, much better than to-do lists. So if you have a planner, you take out the planner every day and you say, okay, these are my working hours. How much time do I want to spend on email? How much time do I need to spend in a meeting? How much time do I want to spend at the gym? How much time do I want to be with my kids? How much time do I need to spend reading? All the things you want to do. This is where the second step comes in of turning your values into time. What are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So people spend their time according to how other people want them to spend their time. Very few people take a step back and say, wait a minute, how do I want to spend my time? And so that's where we have to make a trade-off because you can't do everything. You can have everything and you can do everything, not at the same time. You can't work on a big project and be with your daughter at the same time. It doesn't work that way. You can't be at the gym and also have a meeting with your friends at the same time. It doesn't work. It's very difficult. You can have it all and do it all, not at the same time. So what time boxing forces you to do is to say, okay, I want this much time here and that much time there. Invariably, you won't be able to do it all because it makes you make those trade-offs, which a to-do list doesn't make you do. And that's why at the end of the day, you're exhausted and you still feel like you haven't accomplished very much.
True. I want to step back a little bit into the AI era, how we build product. So you were saying that technology company wanting to use their product more and more and more. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this new product called Tolan, Tolan. It's like AI companion thing. He has this kind of like human latency thing. Like, for example, I was raising caterpillars with my daughter for monarch caterpillars.
Nice.
And then like a couple of days later, he sent me this really nice podcast about this migration of the monarch. And
That's
then
cool.
today, sent me a 60 minutes documentary about the whole like Mexico tour and how this monarch everywhere in the mountain. It told me like, don't do it all at once and then give me like kind of provoke my curiosities. And then it remembers my preferences quite a lot. I've been really like trying to figure out what's the next generation product will be like. It's not like doom scrolling, like mindless scrolling. It's this kind of thing, like just provoke you in the right way, not the other way.
Yeah. I think this is fantastic. I mean, I think this is exactly what I predicted when I wrote Hooked, that the so there's 4, so now we're back to book number 1, not book number 2, where this is for product makers. So there's 4 steps to the hook. The last step of the hook model is the investment phase, where the investment makes the product better and better with use. And I predicted back in 2014 that as technology improves, I wasn't calling it AI back then, but we did have algorithms, and I knew what would happen with these algorithms, is that they would predict what data sources would be necessary to make the product better and better with use. So just like how TikTok and Instagram, based on your past viewing behavior, will serve you new content, I think we're going to see this with every product and service, enterprise, consumer. all kinds of products will have to use that data to improve with use. And this is really a characteristic of habit forming products, is that unlike products in the physical world, right? Your clothing, your couch, your car, all of those things depreciate. They lose value the more you use it.
Mm-hmm.
Habit forming products do the opposite, right? They get better and better the more you use it. So what you're seeing with this product is that the more you use it, the more it's learning about you, and then it can tailor the information that it's providing for you next. It's actually improving your life because it knows what you're likely to want to see.
Yeah, sometimes give me like academic papers to read, and it's just I would like to see more and more products like that. Yeah, do you have any like AI product like that you like so far in the AI agent era?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot more of that type of personalization in everything. I think consumers are going to get very impatient if companies don't do this, right? Like I was just buying airline tickets. Well, how many times do I have to enter in the same information? For every time I buy a ticket for different, like this type of stuff should be as easy as talking to a travel agent and saying, okay, here's my information. You know this already. Like, why do I have to keep entering it again and again? Anyway, you get the point. Like across companies, I think across engagement experiences, these type of products should get better and smarter with use. I think among financial services, there's so much opportunity to anticipate. For example, when you have an unusual transaction and all the fraud alerts you get, that type of stuff should get a lot smarter based on previous behavior, as opposed to just blanket having people having to write in or call in. I think all education products I'm particularly excited about. I think online education is about to have a tremendous revolution because, sitting as a student and just listening to some boring teacher blah, blah, blabble on is not engaging. That's not the way humans are meant to learn. Humans are meant to learn through interacting, through a tutor model. So I'm very, very excited about the future of education. Hopefully, your daughter's young enough to experience this in her lifetime, where I think students will start having some kind of individual AI tutor that will take very boring subjects and make them interesting, as they all should be, because all of us have this spark of human curiosity and creativity, but we're kind of squashed into a little box of, yeah, but you have to sit here and, do what everybody else does all at the same time, all at the same speed. And I think that should be done away with. We should go back to what existed before institutionalized learning, where, if you think about Mozart, if you think about Newton, if you think about Einstein, these people learned because they were curious. They didn't have a homework assignment. They wanted to know something.
Right, very adaptive algorithm for individuals. Right.
Exactly. And we're starting to see like Alpha School, for example, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to see a lot more. Now, I don't know if the legal structures in place and the societal structures, I think unfortunately, school is more about childcare and babysitting than it is about
Exactly.
learning.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So society kind of has to accept that that's not the only reason we send children into this box that we call a school, that actually it's about promoting curiosity and creativity. But if we don't do that, we're just going to lose yet another generation. I mean, for even in our generation, how many subjects do you never want to see ever again? Like I had a terrible physics teacher in high school. I never want to learn physics ever again because it completely destroyed the joy of it. But it's a beautiful subject and I'll never get to experience it. Like who knows? Like I might have really enjoyed it and learned a lot from it, but because I had a really bad teacher.
I have another question that I am dying to ask you. So, for example, like there's really valuable, like deep conversation like what we're having right now is podcast form, like long video form. And there's also like short form, like TikTok, those kind of. What do you think there are long-term consequences of this kind of like a fragmented attention? Is there a way to design product kind of like combine stickiness and depth?
Yeah. I think there is. I think, typically technologies don't die typically. So I don't think that short form will kill long form. I don't think that video kills the book. I think that there's a different place for different technologies. So for example, take chopsticks. Okay. Chopsticks were invented way before the fork. Almost everybody who uses chopsticks has seen the fork. The fork is a newer technology, and yet we use both. So the fork didn't replace chopsticks. It's that when you eat some foods, you eat them with a fork. When you eat other foods, you eat them with chopsticks based on the food type and the context. So I think that there will be a place for long form. There will be a place for short form. There will be a place for whatever's coming after both of these mediums. And we will use the technology for what it does best. So there are definitely some contexts where a paper book and a pen is very useful. There's other places where a 30-second TikTok clip is more useful based on what it's there for.
Right, but don't you worry that there's people all like kind of, especially young people, getting their news from like TikTok? They don't have time or they don't form the habit to read like kind of complex topics. Do you think that'll be a problem?
I think whenever there is a proliferation of a new medium, we're going to find the goods and the bads of that medium. And what we're experiencing is the repercussions of a blessing. The blessing is that for the first time in history, we have literacy rates, we have technology adoption rates, we have leisure rates where people can spend time doing this kind of stuff. And so what's going to happen invariably is that sometimes people see things that you don't agree with, and maybe they make things you don't agree with. But I believe that that's a good thing, that the antidote to one type of speech is the other type of speech. We need both sides. We need that debate. We need different perspectives. It's as long as we can guarantee that there's free access to different perspectives. I think that's how we solve this problem at top. Not always immediately. Sometimes it takes cycles of us pursuing the wrong path to figure out why that path was wrong. This is, how human beings have always plotted through history, is by trying one idea, seeing what happens. If it doesn't work, we try a different idea. But over the long arc of history, this is what happens. So I don't necessarily think this is something we need to be afraid of. Of course, there's certain types of speech we should, I think, regulate, right? You can't incite violence, for example. So I think there is, some speech that at least from my American-centric lens, I think should be off limits. But for the most part, I'm not really worried about how people spend their time online, within limits, of course. I think for the most part, it's a good thing to have diverse perspectives.
I think the last couple questions is I wanted to talk about how we raise the next generation, back to the earlier topic. So in Distractable, you talk about agency as the lever against distraction. But for kids or teenagers, how do we kind of help them to form that kind of agency when they like don't have it yet? Can you talk a little bit more about how we help them get distracted easily, and then how do we raise them properly?
Yeah. So I think we need to help them do the same thing we are struggling with. I think everybody is struggling with distraction. I think one of the best things you can do as a parent, if you want to raise indistractable kids, is to be an indistractable parent. You can't tell your kids, stop playing video games, and meanwhile you're checking email on your phone. It doesn't work that way. You have to set the example. And so I think a lot of parents struggle with being vulnerable in front of their kids. They think they need to be perfect in front of their children. They can never make mistakes. Children need you to be vulnerable. They need you to say where you're struggling, especially if it's something they struggle with. And you can't be a hypocrite. So the worst is to do one thing and say something else. The second worst is to not admit that, hey, we're all struggling with this. So it's okay to tell your kid, hey, look, these devices are super interesting. I also love to use my phone. I also love to watch videos. I also like to play games. But there's other things I like to do with my time as well. Be with you, be with my parents, do the things that also help me have a fulfilling life. And so doing it together, I think, is a key, starting with those very same 4 steps. So step number 1, mastering internal triggers. So if you want to help your child have the best possible future, you need to teach them how to deal with their emotions in a productive way. That's absolutely critical. And understanding what's in their way. Why are they using their devices in excess? Typically, what's happening is, for kids, is that when kids don't get what they need offline, they look for it online. So when kids don't get enough time for play, I think this is a big problem in the industrialized world, is that we so hyper regiment our children between the test prep and the swimming lessons and the ballet and all the things that we regiment our kids to do. We have no time for what I think is the most psychologically important thing for them to do, which is to play. Just to play with other children. It's incredibly important. And we have to, unfortunately, it doesn't just happen organically. We have to schedule time for them to have time to play. That's where they learn their place in the world. So and what we find is when children have that time to play, guess what? They don't want to use their devices, right? The problem is parents don't plan that time. They're lazy. They come home and then they see their kid on their device and they say, why are you on your phone? Go read a book. Come on. Would you have gone and read a book? No. But if a kid has the opportunity to play with their friends, that's typically what they want to do. So
Right,
I think
yeah.
that's very important to satisfy those psychological needs of free play, to make sure that those internal triggers of boredom and loneliness aren't satisfied online. They're satisfied through real world interaction. Then scheduling the time, right? Making time for traction, doing what you did of, hey, here's all the things you want to do with your time. There's nothing wrong with going on the device, but how does that fit into your day? Step number 3, hacking back the external triggers. This is very, very important. The problem with technology and children isn't so much the technology itself, it's what it displaces. So anything that beeps, buzzes, or boops in the bedroom needs to be taken out. Children should not have screens in the bedroom. They shouldn't have television. They shouldn't have a radio. They shouldn't have a fish tank. They shouldn't sleep with pets. Anything that disrupts sleep needs to be out of that child's room. That's a big, big factor in terms of psychological well-being. Sleep is incredibly important. Then the 4th step is preventing distraction with pacts. So teaching your child and yourself how to make these commitments that you will do what you say you're going to do. And so these are the same 4 basic steps that I talk about in Indistractable that you can use on yourself. And of course, we have to teach our children.
Awesome, awesome. Be vulnerable and learn together with your child and face the problem together, and then you have a fine child.
and make sure that you know what you're doing. Right? Read some books on this topic.
Yes, read a book.
But I think it's important. I think the most important thing is to not be scared of the technology. I think the easiest thing to do is for a parent to say, well, that didn't exist when I was a kid, so it's bad. This has always happened, right? It's called the moral panic. And I think that's a big mistake, because what are you teaching your kid if you say, oh, get off technology. Technology is melting your brain. It's bad for you. Well, you're teaching them that they shouldn't use it. The jobs of the future require them to use these technologies. We want our kids to be tech literate, or they'll be unemployed.
I know, it's like Chinese parent, don't date anyone until you're graduate from college. Like, find a spouse right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, why aren't you married yet? Well, because you told me not to date anybody. So it's the same exact thing. We want them to be familiar with the technology and to learn from a very early age how to say, okay, enough. Now I need to do something else.
Thank you so much, Nir, for joining us. You mentioned that there's tons of resources on your website, nirandfar.com, right?
Right, exactly. That's right. So it's Nir, spelled like my first name, Nir, and far.com.
Okay, we'll put in our show note. And then if anyone want more information from you, and there's books and there are tons of resources. Thank you so much. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.